In fact, only 20 riders from other countries have won this race since its instigation in 1913. But what everybody's talking about here at the moment is the Italian domination of professional cycling here in Europe. Since the start of the year, we've had 90 days of racing, 56 of which have gone to the Italians. Surely in a race which the Flandrians and the Belgians regard as their own, we'll see the end of the Italian domination in the races so far this year. Let's get down to the action with Phil Diggett.
Well, thanks very much, Paul. And indeed, the Belgians normally are the riders to beat here in Flanders, but as you say, it's the Italians who have been dominating the start of this season. Greg LeMond in his gang colours, and this likely to be his final season here in Europe before he returns to race in the United States at the end of a brilliant career. And here's Laurent Fignon. He never did win the Tour de Flanders. Now he's a television co-commentator, and I wonder what he'll have to say. This is the man they'll aim to beat, Johan Museeuw, in the square at Sint-Niklaas this morning, in front of his home crowd, former champion of Belgium, the winner a year ago. Eric van der Aarde, back on a new team for Italy this year, and again another man in front of a home crowd. And what a massive crowd, as always, there is here in the square at Sint-Niklaas for the start of the 267-kilometre race. Edwig van Hooijdonk, once a winner of the amateur Tour de Flanders, twice a winner of the professional one they call in the boss of the Bosberg. That's the last climb today. And the face of Johan Capiot, always a great rival of the other Belgian sprinters here, and a likely man for victory at the end. Gianni Bugno making an appearance and aiming for a classic victory, the twice world champion, a man who could take him on, the English-born rider, Max Sciandri, now very much an Italian and this year on an Italian team. Moreno Argentin, the winner of this race back in 1990, and they've always called him a man for the early season classics. The weather's not like Italy, he says. It certainly isn't. And a man on form this year, a great sprinter in last year's Tour of Italy, Fabio Baldato. His ponytail and always makes him easily recognisable. And the big sprinter himself, the self-proclaimed fastest man in the world, Mario Cipollini, signing on here in the middle of these three. If it comes to a sprint, well, that's where your money should go. Little Claudio Chiappucci, King of the Mountains Tour de France, second and third, but never the final yellow jersey. He's here in a rare appearance in a classic race in Belgium. Fabio Roscioli made his mark 1 year ago in the Tour de France when he won that very, very long stage down on the south coast of the country. Vyacheslav Yekimov used to hold about 11 world records at one time and now riding for the Word Perfect team. And the demon sprinter of them all, he either wins or gets disqualified, Jamaluddin Abdu-Japarov. The longest name and the shortest signature. And these look like the legs of Olaf Ludwig. A nice smile from Olaf, 1988 world and Olympic champion in Seoul. And the world champion of the day, Motorola's own Lance Armstrong, little bit concerned about his form at the start of the season, but it's early days yet and a chance today to impress. Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, well, his big day still to come in Paris-Roubaix. Maybe today will be a chance to find some good early season form. Laurent Jalabert, the French sprinter, won the green jersey in the Tour de France a couple of years ago. And so the gun goes for the 78th Tour of Flanders. It really is a favourite amongst the Belgian public and indeed a favourite amongst the riders. They all want to win it. The obstacles, 16 climbs they call the Bergs. Well, that was the rollout, and now the race is very much on in earnest here as they fight for positions now to get on to the narrow roads of the fourth climb of the day, the Oude Kwaremont climb. And I can tell you that no major breakaways have been allowed to escape so far. There's been a puncture to Johan Museo, but he's got back into the field. Ludwig has been very active on the climbs, Olaf Ludwig, on the climbs that have gone by, especially the Kluisbergen. But basically the field has regrouped here now, and you can see by the racing being done at the front that they've shelled one or two riders away from the back of the race here. The strong men really have piled on the pressure in this last 15 minutes because they want to see the narrow approach to the Oude Kwaremont. This could be the start of the shaping of the race today. The field greatly reduced by the fine attacking riding, but basically all of the fancied men are still right here in this big bunch. As always, as the field twists, and there's a crash on the corner there, somebody touched the wheel and they've gone down. A little bit of chaos at the back of the race, and be careful because there's a chase group right around. And the rider is back up and running, well, almost, quite literally running there in fact, but they're all back on the road. There's nobody left behind. And it's given the chance possibly for one or two of that peloton behind to get back into the action. The field generally regrouping here after the climb of the Côte de Treux, where Chiappucci tried hard to split the field, but he failed to do so. He's now back in this lead group, but in fact such pressure did he apply, he did break the big field up. But the Tour of Flanders is always a battle of elimination, because of these small climbs, the bergs, small mountains that abound here. He's Vyacheslav Yekimov looking for a little bit of assistance and riding with great confidence, one might add, today for his new Word Perfect team. Expects to possibly spearhead the challenge for Word Perfect in this year's Tour du Pont in the United States, as they now make their way up towards the start of the climb of the Oude Kwaremont. Well, Yekimov's having a great start to the year, and certainly they've never had a Russian winner of the Tour of Flanders. As Paul Sherwin said earlier, it's usually the Flanders riders who win this race. In fact, Belgium have won it 57 times, which gives them 74% of the possible victories in this race, the Tour of Flanders, and the rest of the nations frankly are nowhere. There's only been 6 other nations ever having taken the finishing line in first place, and just to tell you who they are, they're Holland, Italy, France, Switzerland, Great Britain and Germany. You can see just how narrow these roads are. They're very difficult races to ride. They're absolutely made to perfection for the Belgian riders, and a little bit of a problem here. One of the many tour buses that comes out and brings the spectators has gone down the ditch, and what it has caused is a detailed deviation or diversion for a lot of the following cars, but they couldn't send the riders off the route, so very soon the riders are going to come past there. There's the graphic. As you see, we climb to a height of 91 metres, about 300 feet above sea level. The steepest portion is 10%, and the distance is 2.2 metres. Whatever did we do without the wonderful arts of graphics and computers in the past for these races, which go back, of course, to the early part of the century. And there's the riders coming through, making it a little bit more narrow than usual, and they're going to battle and hold their positions at the front now. Ludwig is there in third place, and these riders thinking too of the upcoming Paris-Roubaix, and this race coming not too far on from Milan-San Remo. Round 2 this of the World Cup. A little graphic there telling you that the climb of the Kwaremont also has its little share of cobblestones. There aren't too many on this road, and certainly none of the riders resorting to the extremes of handlebar padding and front shock absorbers on the bikes that they will do when they go down for the Paris-Roubaix event. I think this is Capiot here who's setting the pace. Crowd leaning forward to see if they can pick out their champions. If any country has the enthusiasm and knowledge of cycling, it's Belgium. It's never changed. They're just a little bit disappointed that they've never replaced Eddy Merckx with another man of the same mould. And if anything, that has damaged cycling here in Belgium these last few years. They want another hero to cheer. And the World Championship jersey there of Lance Armstrong in 5th place, and he's having a good race today. He's been a little concerned. He hasn't been riding like he would have hoped for the start of the season, but you know, the world champions very rarely do. As you come to learn over the years, when you pull on the white jersey, I think it's the white jersey of death sometimes, because very often prolific winners in the year they take the title are not prolific winners in the year they wear the arc-en-ciel, the rainbow jersey. So Capiot setting the pace, followed by Olaf Ludwig. Pierpucci sitting about 4 men down the line too, trying to keep out of trouble as much as set the pace, I think, because he's well aware of these narrow roads. A little bit surprised to see Pierpucci here, but it's good to see him. Part of the new deal, I think, the organisers have struck with the big teams. They want to see all of the top teams support World Cup races this year and not miss out on some of them just because they mean a lot of travelling. And perhaps the new deals are working. Over the top of the Kwaremont, and now it's a bit of cobble. Oh, in fact, Ludwig's made a big mistake there. That was a big mistake, and in fact the rider who's fallen behind him was Verdanza, who's gone down, I think. And just look at this, because of the narrow roads, total chaos now. That was Ludwig's fault. I mean, it's unfair to blame him completely because his back wheel seemed to get stuck in the rut there. He lost the back end and he fell, and Capiot must be wondering what has happened to the Tour de Flanders behind him, because he shot off up the road by himself. There's nobody with him, and that's the champion of Belgium down there, Alain van den Bosch. He had a very nasty crash as well in the World Championship last year in Norway. You may recall the terribly slippery conditions in the rain in Oslo. And now he's down again, and it looks in fact as though he's hurt his arm as well. And Verdanza not looking too pleased with himself on the far side of the road. He's hurt his knee on the cobblestones, and the field continues to come through. Now this may well have shaped the race, you know, because Capiot has gone. He won't be a volunteer for the attack with so long to go, because there's still plenty of climbs to come. Now let's have a look again. You can see in the distance the back wheel slipping and sliding of Ludwig. But being the good bike handler he is, he doesn't fall down, but the rest have gone. And gone in a big way too. And Ballerini, I think, is in amongst that lot. Bontempi just getting back in the saddle there. And not a service car in sight, because they won't even know really there's been a crash at the front. Just watch it again now. Watch the second man and watch his back wheel. He tries to come out of a rut, then he loses it. Holds it absolutely brilliantly and only has to put his foot down. That's because Verdanza's back wheel touched Olaf Ludwig's. And then the hapless Capiot finds himself the leader of the Tour de Flanders and on his own. But there's an awful long way to go, and here he is. So now, well, if you've been given the race lead, you don't dream of winning at this stage, but you do dream of setting a pace that might only be matched by 1 or 2. And now look at this. 3 Italian riders are flying up towards the leaders here. I think Bontempi is one of them. Certainly number 74 at the back is Kengi Alter, former stage winner of the Tour de France. Capiot checking over to see who is coming up. Not too sure he'll welcome the arrival of 3 Italians, because again the Italians are driving the train. They're having such a confident start to the year. And there's Capiot. His rankings in the world, 48th. Which isn't bad for a man that's basically considered to be a sprinter, but he can put in some strong performances, and he's been joined now by these 3 riders, and there they are, Guido Bontempi, Dario Battaro and Kengi Alter, of the same Givis team. 3 Italians on the same team. Now surely the race isn't going to allow this to happen for very long. And Bontempi has found his legs this year, new ones as they are. And with 3 cards to play, at the moment they're just going to settle in, because the next big challenge of the day will be the Paterberg, a 5th climb. And that's where they're heading to now, and it's not too far away, and there's 4 of them clear. Capiot going to feel a little bit self-conscious now, surrounded by 3 Italians, and not just 3 Italians, but 3 on the very same team, the Givis team. And Bontempi coming here with a lot of confidence. having finished 4th overall in the recent 3 days of La Panne, which is along the top of the Belgian coastline, and they're left now with, as you can see, 108 kilometres to go. That's about 67 miles to the finish. But of course, as with all classic races here, the stings are in the tails, and the field now racing towards the Paterberg, the 5th of 16 climbs. And there's the pack. Well, it's been thinned out a little bit, but it does seem to be reorganising itself into the chase. And it's the Motorola, and that looks like the giant figure of Sean Yates driving the train at the front. Trying to correct an error which was certainly not theirs, and I suppose you can't really blame Olaf Ludwig either, a very experienced rider who would never have done that. And there you are, 14 climbs to come and 12 stretches of cobblestones. Back up with the leaders now. The Paterberg, the next challenge as the riders lock hard right. There's our details. Maximum gradient 20%, only goes up to a height of 44 metres. Oh dear me, Ken Gyalte's chain has gone. Look at that. Oh, well, that is terrible bad luck. The pressure of the cobblestones has smashed his chain. He's been left. Bontempi at the back here has noted that. He'll be sorry to see Ken Gyalte go. He would have been a strong member of this breakaway. And that indeed is a shame, because also in trouble is Guido Bontempi, while Baldato is stepping on the gas and moving clear at the front. It looks too as though, in fact, Johan Capiot not too happy with the uphill sections of the Tour de Flanders. Massive crowd though willing him on. But it's the Italians who are taking him on and starting to go clear. If he can just limit his losses, and that's what he's trying to do, he knows that once over the top, he'll slip into top gear and we will rejoin him at the front. But the sad news is, with such a long way to go, some 106 kilometres, they've lost a very valuable element of this breakaway in Bruno Ken Gyalte. And the crowd urging on Johan Capiot to keep the two Italians in sight. He's over the top on smooth concrete, out of the saddle. He wants the wheel of the big man, Guido Bontempi, because he knows the Baldato will wait for Bontempi. There's much too far to go. Let's go back down the climb. And in fact, this is Edition now, and he's pacing Fabio Roscioli, another inspired Italian rider after his victory in the 3 days of La Panne. What a changed man he is since he won a stage of the Tour de France last year. And Roscioli 192. On the back wheel of Eddie Schura. Well, if those two can replace Ken Gyalte at the front, we've got another Italian up there, and it could well go away again. There's the three escapees, without, unfortunately, Bruno Ken Gyalte through no fault of his own. And Capiot just keeping a close eye on the two Italians, not prepared to do too much work at this point. Remember, he was projected into the lead, rather than placed in a very strong attack because of that crash, where Ludwig virtually stopped the field for a while. They've now been over the climb of the Paterberg. They only last a few seconds, but my goodness me, they do hurt. And that leaves us with 11 climbs still to come. And the next climb will be number 6 on the course, the Hotond. And that's coming with some 99 kilometres still to race. Baldato is 73, Bontempi is number 72. And the whole world in cycling asking, why are the Italians racing so well this year? And nobody yet knowing the answer. There's Guido, Tour de France stage winner, multi-Tour of Italy stage winner. I think his record is 10 stages. Capiot doing just enough to not be accused of underworking in the breakaway. Face of concentration there. Let's have a look at that incident on the climb of the Paterberg. Here it is. Look at the chain dangling off the back wheel there of Bruno Ken Gyalte like a long snake. Nothing he could do except grind literally to a halt and wait for the whole field to go by before the service cars could get him a bike. Well, he's chasing, we're assured of that, and he knows at least he's left his two teammates out in the lead. Capiot back in front. We're still waiting to have a glance back and see what's happened to the two chasers, because they're still clear of the field. Edition and Fabio Roscioli. Let's have a look down. There they are. They're coming up. There's going to be 5 leaders very shortly, and they've built quite a lead over the field, over the top of the Paterberg. Riding with supreme confidence, Roscioli prepared to drive this one along. Eddie Schurer from Nova, my team, his store team rather. Very similar colours and working well together because their tails are up on a good stretch of road before they get to the Hotond. Turning the biggest gear they've got. The rain has gone away, a little bit of a wet side to the road there, but drying up rapidly now. There's the situation, a 10-second gap still to bridge. They should do that now, and if news reaches the 3 up front, I think they would slow down. Quite frankly, because with such a long way to go and some climbs to come, they could do with more in that breakaway. And remember too that the big names, the very big names of this race are still in the group. As we pan back, we should see them. Well, they have opened a gap on the climb of the Paterberg. What a marvellous attack this has been. And yet the big peloton will have seen Kengi Alta come to a stop. Well, it looks a long way, but in fact it's only 32nd at the minute, and I suppose we've got something like 25 to 30 or so riders in that chase group. And about 63 miles to go. Zulzeke is where we are. And Flanders looking beautiful in the sunshine of the European spring here. I think of all the classic races, possibly with the exception of Paris-Roubaix, that all of the riders would love to win, it is the Tour de Flanders. It has a lot of appeal about it, and the riders feel this is a real cycle race with its narrow roads, its twisting nature, tremendous support from the Belgian people, and it's good to see the Italians taking part in it in numbers at last. Capiot, his multicoloured bicycle matching his multicoloured TVM jersey, and the more sombre colours of the Givis team. Hotond, it's 4 kilometres to the top of the climb, climb number 6. Capiot showing us to be a little bit suspect on the climb, but just look at the way Bontempi is driving the train now. This big man sits very upright on his bike. He's won Tours de France stages in the sprint. He's also won them by himself. I remember his victory in Vascal. They're not too far away from the French frontiers, and he rode away from the field there for a very good win on a hard day. He's done it before on other stages as well. There's the little chase group of 2 in tandem. Well, it's 16 seconds they're saying now, so they're losing ground, but it doesn't appear to be much in it at all. The Hotond is 8%, the climb itself, and will lift the riders not much above sea level really, 78 metres, and when they get to the top they're just on more or less 100 kilometres to go. Slight uphill here as we start the climb itself. Keeping the riders out of the saddle, Dario Bertano. Those big bronze legs. The Italians are not enjoying really the weather here in the area of Europe, which is not their favourite. The Italians are very much people of their own soil, where the weather is temperate in most places. 15 seconds, so they're nibbling away but holding, and the big field regrouping here for the next charge because they're exactly a minute now. They won't like the gap to grow much more than that. And one unlucky policeman, you can see his red helmet, has put him right in the centre of the big pack, and that's a big problem here. Because of the narrow roads, and the police have simply got to get ahead and sort things out for the riders. A lot of Motorola riders down there, at least 5 in this leading group. And a puncture to somebody else who's just ridden off the back of the race. That's going to happen all day long today, I suspect. Each rider doing a fair turn at the front so as not to spoil each other's rhythm. They know it's still a long way to go. For the moment at least, they're going to remain allies, even though two of them are on separate teams, or two teams represented here. Baldato setting the pace now. Capiot, oh, he's really feeling the pace on the climb, because they're going up this climb. It doesn't appear much of a climb, and indeed it isn't much of a climb, but when they climb it at these sort of speeds, it hurts. Now the gap is closing down this time, and it's the strong workhorse action here of Fabio Roscioli who's going to get them and finish them off very quickly. The great Fabio Roscioli, since he won that stage in the heat of the south of France last year. On that occasion, though, he said if he won a stage of the Tour de France, he'd take all his neighbours out for dinner. Well, it cost him a lot of money, because there were 25 of them after he won his stage of the Tour de France. He won't be thinking about that now. He's thinking about his latest victory, the 3 days of La Panne, just finished, which has brought the riders just down the road to the start of the Tour de Flanders, and he's confident. He's finished them off nice and quickly at last. Now we've got 5 riders in the lead: Bontempi, Baldato, Capiot, Schura and Roscioli. And of the 5 riders, there are 3 Italians, and there are 3 teams represented in the breakaway. And so this is Gianni Bugno now taking an interest in the breakaway. They've moved on a little bit down the road. We've now gone over the top of the Kruisberg, the Hotond and the Eikenberg. And now the big guns are firing. These 5 riders are beginning to cause concern, but they're being brought back steadily. Edwin van Hooydonk here, the man they call the boss of the Bosberg. On the right of our picture, he's won it twice this race as a professional. There's the breakaway. The gap is 53 seconds, so there is reason now to start working very hard indeed. The race into its last 70 kilometres, and the breakaway has been ahead now for the best part of 40 kilometres, some 25 miles. Erik van der Aarden now also at the front, keeping the pace high. But there's still a number of climbs to come, including the Varent. We're over the top of the Volkegemberg. Gentle turn around the corner. In fact, the motorcycle's being caught out a little bit there, causing the riders to queue, and they won't be pleased with that. And that was the reason for Van der Aarden and Van Hooydonk working so quickly at the front. They wanted to see that corner first, because as any of these riders will tell you, for up to half an hour before they get to the narrow roads in these races, racing at the front is very hard to hold your position, so you can demand that first sighting around the bend. Now Van Hooydonk, those long lanky legs, the man who turned professional and shocked everybody when he finished 5th in his first Paris-Roubaix, and after that he progressed nicely, but he hasn't been riding so well of late, and a very unhappy for him Tour de France last year. And in fact the word perfect team really could do with a big result right now. Gap beginning to come down at last now, as again the field running up very close to those motorbikes. And the initial surge by Van Hooydonk as he came off that climb has strung the big peloton out, and plenty of them left there are too. Still up near the front, Edwin van Hooydonk and Erik van der Aarden. Nasty bend that one, if that looks like loose sand on the road there. Riders getting round it safely. Still have this breakaway, but they're dangling off the front now. The way this course twists and turns, it's so difficult to organise a real concerted chase. Forever changing direction, that's what makes this such an interesting race. 74 kilometres still to go to the finish at Meta. The next big climb of note will be the Varenberg, the 11th climb of the day. And Varenberg, well, it's not a big climb by mountain standards, of course. There's nothing of that nature here in Belgium, but it takes the riders up to 52 meters above sea level. Steepest part of the gradient will be 11%. The rainbow jersey still down there and prominently displayed by Lance Armstrong, who's had a little bit of a troublesome day today with his crash. When we saw him stop there, in fact apparently had a double puncture when he fell in both tyres on the accident which was caused there by Olaf Ludwig. But there's a lot of urgency down there now as the riders scramble for the wheels. They're now trying to close this race down a little bit. There's Lance Armstrong dancing on the pedals and hold his position very, very well indeed. The Javis team still also very much in the action with riders on the front. The Mapei-Clas team are also here too. The Lamprey team without Maurizio Fondriest, regrettably having to face an operation on a fractured disc in his back, which will probably keep him off the bike until the start of the Tour de France, which he didn't ride last year, but now I think he very much is likely to do so this time. 44 seconds, the gap is beginning to come down now. And the pace on, because the next climb could be a decisive climb if they can organise their attack here. Dagot to Lawrence, and it looked like the TVM trying to grab hold of one or two wheels. And the riders taking the last chance to take on board a little bit more fuel. You saw one or two of them eating as we've gone along this line. There's Yekimov in second place. Well, it wasn't really second, was it? But he was second in our shot. He's quite a long way down the line, actually. It's going to take a little bit of hard work to get back to the sharp end of this race. We'll go back up to the sharp end, which here on Churchgate is the next cobble section of the road. Capiot, he's been seen to be in trouble on the small climbs all day, but he's recovering well. Roscioli just ahead of him. And Eddie Schurer there for the Histor team in second place. It's Bontempi who's keeping up the rhythm. The gap is coming down now. Head up towards the Valenberg, and it looks as though Roscioli is having a little bit of trouble here on the cobblestones, keeping the gap down. He's working very hard to hold his position on that machine, and that says a lot for the power of Bontempi. And Capiot is in even worse trouble. Tempe sits there, and as all good champions do, he makes it look so easy, doesn't he? Eddie Schurer was hoping he might slow it down a little bit. Bontempi, for a man who's 34 years of age, is having one of his best starts of the season for some time. And this is Johan Museo and André Schmiel, and they appear to have got themselves off the front, and they certainly know which way to ride the cobblestones. Just don't ride them at all, jump on the sidewalk, and the Museo follows the wheel with ease there of André Schmiel. And the line is just behind, so this is the sort of reaction we would expect at this stage of the race now. Last year's winner is now on the attack, and Edwin van Hooijdonk knows a good wheel to chase, and I think that's Gianni Bugno on the wheel too of Van Hooijdonk. Now this is a good move. Ballerini's moving up as well. In fact, that is Diaz Zabala, Herminio Diaz Zabala, who's just got onto the wheel of Gianni Bugno. Now this is quite a scramble that's going on here, but they're breaking clear of the field. As if Ballerini heard me, that is him now as he tries to get across, and he has launched an attack which has linked him up to Diaz Zabala, who was on the Once team last year. And the spectators there must wonder quite where to stand, because they're both sides of that gentleman with his son. So this looks as though we may now be seeing a reaction that could well close in very rapidly on that breakaway. It's been started by André Schmiel, the Moldavian, And here's Capiot, preferring the risk of a puncture on the grit to the pounding of the cobblestones, but I think even the shale has frightened him off a little bit there. And Roscioli is doing the work now. Bontempi in second place. Only one win last year for Bontempi, and two very distant finishes in the big tours, the Tour of Spain and the Tour of Italy. And the reaction is being formed now. That's Bugno and Schmil. Musier, Ballerini just one up from the back of the line. And it's Kengialta, the other rider. Well, that's a tremendous ride by Bruno Kengialta, number 74. He was the rider we saw with the broken chain. He was way off the back of the field because of the narrow road before he got a new bike, and he's come right through the field and is now gone off the front again. Well, that is absolutely amazing. He's been up with the break once today, and if this breakaway does keep his momentum, he's going to be up there again pretty soon as well. Superb cycling by Kengialta. Schmil setting the pace here though. With him is Bugno, Museu, then it's Kengialta. With long thin legs of Van Hooijdonk and Ballerini, all prepared to work together at this stage of the race to try and close in on those 5 leaders. Might get a chance now to see just how far. Oh dear me, no distance at all now. He's closed down so quickly since they started the attack. Largely been done by Andre Schmil, I feel. Rider who's come now to live in France, just across the borders in Roubaix. And Johan Museu choosing to leave the Lotto team at the start of the season before, where he's gone across to Italy. There's the composition of the two groups, and very shortly now we're going to have something like 10 riders up there in the lead. Well, this is the group, and in fact the two groups have merged now, and we couldn't show you the pictures because in fact we lost vision for about 10 minutes. But now the two groups have merged, and in fact 1 or 2 more riders have joined into this lead group now. There are 17 riders, possibly 18 in this breakaway, and Marc Sergent, number 81, is also up here as well. There's the complete group of 18 riders. A little bit of a surprise there to see number 222 at the end of the list. Frank Korver's up here, but welcome to see him. One of the young riders on the Koolstrop team, and in fact the only Koolstrop rider to make the split. They're about 46 seconds ahead of what's left of the peloton. Van Hooijdonk is here. Andre Schmil racing through there. Johan Museu. And a little bit of work required. I'm not sure whether Ballerini there was having a chat with Bugno. There's Frank Korver's going through, shaking his legs, and that's in fact his Ballerini going through. And here is Capiot, now resumed his position at the back of the race, along with Eddie Schur. Remember, it was the breakaway originally by Johan Capiot when he went clear over the top of the Oude Kwaremont that started the reactions from the rest of the race. And this is the leading group. As we head now on to the Leberg climb, this is climb number 12 today, just 900 metres, but it's steep, as you can see, 11% in the middle. And Roscioli, I don't think, looking forward to this one like he has been so far this race. Sitting at the back of a very elite group of riders here, and setting the pace at the front, I think, is the teammate now of Gianni Bugno. Pace continues on the climb, and Capiot taking much closer order here. Van Hooijdonk riding well too, and a very, very sharp acceleration coming here. I don't know who it was who caused the attack, but it's caused quite a reaction. Perron is now trying to chase him down. Well, it's Marc Sergent who's turning the screw. Looks over his shoulder. He's always been called the man of the Tour de Flanders. He's always been close and thereabouts, but never won it. And he's trying to break up this breakaway. He feels there's a little bit too many people in the group. And the Italians appear to be fighting to keep it together. They won't want to keep it that way for too long. Baldato has got up there to second place now. Bugno dropped down to the centre of the field. Rob Harmeling is the rider sitting at the back of the group. Johan Capiot in the centre of our picture too, taking much closer order. Andre Schmuel in the red jersey there, you can pick him out quite easily. The rider's now thinking of one of the difficult climbs still left in this race, climb number 13, and it might be unlucky for some, the Molenberg. It's an 18% climb. The 18 men make their way steadily now. They're calling it the Group Museu. 50 seconds the lead over the rest of the race. And still the man who started it all, Johan Capiot, moving smoothly through the line as our Belgian cameraman tries to pick him out. There he is. And with him too, last year's winner of the race, and we're left with just 58 kilometres to go now. Sitting at the back here is Dario Baldato, in the move today along with his two teammates. And welcome back to Kingi Alta. Despite his broken chain, he's now in this group still. He's number 74, and you can just see him to the right of our picture there, riding one man in front of Johan Museu and two in front of Ballerini. Ballerini's a man we must watch out for. He could win this race today. Well, the confidence of this group, they're letting themselves tick over nicely. They're not committing suicide to stay clear of the chase. It's still hovering less than a minute, in fact. They're more concerned with the tactics which is going on within this race now. Riders sounding each other out and testing one another. There's Bugno, just flexing his legs. In fact, he's taking his feet warmers off. Perhaps he's going to hot the pace up in a minute. And there's his teammate, Perron, keeping the pace high. And Rob Harmeling probably thinking of Johan Capiot for the sprint, also pulling his weight at the front of the pace. Look at you down the road there, no sign of anybody coming up. A slight diagonal in the line indicating there is a wind, nothing to talk of. Coming across the field from the bottom of our picture at the minute. There's Bugno, now rid of his feet warmers. In fact, maybe he isn't, because he's calling the team car forward. Maybe in his back pocket there. You might want to know also what is happening behind and who, if anybody, is on the chase. And the car's not coming up, and he'll start losing his temper in a minute, I would imagine. Here he comes. This is the neutral service car that's in fact coming up to him, and there are the feet warmers, I think they are, going into the... In fact, there are his gloves. Oops-a-daisy. Now come on, a little bit closer. Now it's back on with the action there. In fact, are his positions in the Ronde van Vlaanderen over the last few years, and a couple of years when he never rode the event. Well, the Italians have never ridden very well in this race. But this is a new season, and the Renaissance continues for Italy, and it was Bugno, let's not forget, who did start the Renaissance a few seasons ago when he won Milan-San Remo in record time. And since that moment, they just seem to have gone on and on with great victories. There's our next challenge now, the nasty little climb of the Molenberg. It's only 490 metres, half a kilometre. It's really no distance at all, but it hurts. More little tiny narrow roads. Sitting at the back of the group here is Dario Baldato. It's a case of close your eyes and suffer if you're in trouble on this climb, and it looks as though Harmeling is having a little bit of bother now at the back of the group. Capiot noticeably trying to move further up the line. There's the little drag to the top, and the crowd are here four deep on the right of our picture. Baldato in a little bit of trouble. So too is big Rob Harmeling. Andre Schmiel flies through though and just lifts the pace now, trying desperately to see if he can shake a few riders off the tail of this group now. He wants this group to be smaller. He has no teammates up here at all, Andre Schmiel. He's going to have to do it all himself. Now, of course, it's the power of recuperation, and when you struggle on the climb, the man that can find the effort to screw much harder over the top, then you can snap the elastic, and you can see it's hurt one or two, but it looks to me as though they're going to come back. Roscioli may be in a little bit of trouble though. He's been suffering these last few climbs, and these are the riders, in fact, that attack by Andre Schmiel has hurt. Roscioli in trouble, Batalo in trouble. Roscioli still trying to pick his way rapidly back up to the tail of the breakaway. And there's the official confirmation that Harmeling has gone off the back of the group. And this is Eddie Schurer still trying to get back in touch with the leaders. Well, these are very experienced professional riders, men like Eddie Schurer, Johan Capiot, etc. They know if they can just limit their losses on the climb without making too much of a savage effort, they can slip it up a gear and close down the gaps over the top, and they won't lose too much energy in doing so. And I think that's what one or two of them have done. And there they are. They're coming back up to this leading group yet again. Just 3 small climbs remaining in this year's Tour of Flanders, and they're really good ones. The Berendries is so often the place, in fact indeed last year it was where the breakaway went when Johan Museo disappeared over the top with Frans Massen, and in previous years it's gone on the Bosberg with men like the boss of the Berg, as they call him, Edwig van Hooijdonk, attacking on that very place on the 2 times he's won this race. So significant climbs still to come. Not good news for these two at the back here, Batalo and Roscioli. And perhaps the steepest of them all, the Muur, hill number 15, which comes with 15 kilometres, just under 10 miles to go. At the moment though, we're about 31 miles from the finish, and the breakaway generally is regrouped. I don't think though that Rob Harmeling has rejoined, but he may have done. Eddie Schurer certainly has, and so too, and never in trouble, is Ballerini. Kengialta, you see there's no number on his frame. He's the rider that snapped his chain and has taken a spare bike in the panic to rejoin, and what a great job he's done coming back up to this leading group so well. There's the big figure of Guido Bontempi, and he's sitting on the wheel of Fabio Baldato. You'd think I was commentating on the Tour of Italy here with all of the Italian riders in this breakaway, rather than the Tour of Flanders in the cycling sensitive area of Belgium. And Andrea Perron, and the other rider in the Polti jersey, the yellow jersey down there, is of course Gianni Bugno. "26 miles left to go," and Marc Sergeant once again in at the possible kill of a Tour de Flanders. He was third back in 1983, Marc Sergeant, but he really does love this race. He had a 6th in 88, a 6th in 89, 9th in 91, and it goes on. He was 4th in 1993. The man of the Tour of Flanders, Marc Sergeant. And there's an attack here going off the front of the race as we're heading out now towards the Berendries climb, climb number 14. And this breakaway, which was really forming around that 5 men, which was started by Johan Capiot, still appears to be deciding the race. Just over a minute ahead of anybody else of significance. And it looks as though we're coming down now into the area of Zottegem, and there's confirmation of that. And again, the riders not showing any great urgency to break up this field. Even at the feeding station, a truce is called. André Perrin, who's here, I think, really primarily to look after his teammate. This is Rob Harmeling, big Dutchman. And that's where we are now, leaving Zottegem, heading out towards Brakel. We've got the climb of the Berendries on the left of our picture, then the Muur, then the Bosberg, as we go on towards Meerbeke for the finish. About 41 kilometres, just over 25 miles to go. And the boss is still here, Edward van Hooijdonk. Baldato, there's Schmiel, the little red Moldavian. Right colour really for a former Soviet rider, I suppose. The Lotto team changing their colours this year. Van Hooijdonk just actually calling for a team car there. He doesn't appear to be any serious trouble, but he may want a bottle perhaps. An attack going on the front of the group. I think this is Carlo Bowman's. In fact, Carlo Bowman's coming from behind the group. He punctured earlier on, and this has been a very, very good chase by the former champion of Belgium, Carlo Bowman's, now riding alongside Johan Museo, and it's good news for Museo as well. The Bowman's has got back. He had a back wheel puncture, good change, and is now back in the group. It's been a long chase for him though, and it will undoubtedly have hurt him for the big finish. Schmiller's at the front, and Bowman's, I think we'll see him picking his way through. There he is, and a very good return indeed by him. All the team cars blowing the horns, reminding each other that there is a man coming back through the convoy. Kengi Alta is taking time out back with his team car at the minute, and Bowman's now taking the opportunity to load up with some carbohydrate perhaps, ready for the final assault. There's Edwin van Hooijdonk. I don't know what he took from the car, but he's got it and he rejoins the race. Long, tall man rides a very, very high saddle. Handles himself very well for a tall, thin rider. And he's got the whole of the race that matters in this year's Tour de Flanders now lined out in front of him. Each one of these riders surely now assessing as to who might be the strong man at the finish. They're always going to worry about Johan Museo. I would certainly worry about Franco Ballerini. Marc Sergeant, an opportunist, always rides well in this event. He's at the front at the moment. And if we're looking for a surprise, maybe Baldato. But I think really he's here now just to defend in the interests of his team leader, Museu, because a Belgian on Belgian soil really would be the fitting result. You see, they've never really escaped the field, have they? It's hovered around a minute for so long, and it's 50 seconds at the time as we start now heading up towards the next climb of the day, the Berendries. Sergeant setting the pace and keeping the race together again. Perron dropping back, possibly going to have a little word with Gianni Bugno. Kengi Alta back in the pack. Frank Corver's on his right, number 31 there. That was Franco Ballerini. Little look at the camera, not even a smile for us, Franco. Roscioli, what a yo-yo day he has had, but he seems to have found his second win now. But riding in the back position, the ticket collector's position, is always a hazardous affair, because when it does stretch at the front, you're the one that feels the pain at the back. 38 kilometres to go down to the line. Oh, and that's not the way to stop. Roscioli almost collected the back of that car. Well, the trouble with this course is the roads do narrow down rather suddenly, and if you try to pass, you can find yourself sliced quite out of it, and that's what happened there. Well, the pressure has been just enough to stop any progress from anybody coming up from behind, because the majority of the teams with the men that matter have got their riders in the breakaway, and although they're limiting the gains right now, there doesn't seem anybody capable of organising the chase that would close the gap down. A reminder of who is in the group. And the big surprise, I suppose, is Gianni Bugno, because you never know whether he's going to be good, bad or retire. Well, it says Frans Maassen is up here in this group, but I've never seen him. I doubt very much he's here. The runner-up last year, beaten in the sprint. The 3 climbs still to come are going to be decisive. Berendries, climb number 14, is a 13% climb. And I think that will be the first serious move that we should see that might well lead to the final decisions. There's 3 little mountains left. Armeling at the back. Frank Corvers. A big surprise from the Koolstrop team, and it's nice to see a new name. No wins for Frank, as far as I know, as a Belgian rider in professional ranks, but even so, it's always the first time. He's just 25 years of age this year. But quite clearly a man of some talent. Had a reasonably high finish in the Tour de l'Avenir, the race of the future. Towards the end of last season he was 13th, I think, overall. Well, he's mixing it with the elite today, that's for sure. Well, Perrin on the front at the moment, and in fact it looks as though Perrin is going to try. Now, we saw him drop back and have a chat with Gianni Bugno, and I'm wondering if Bugno has said put in an attack on the Berendries or the approaches to the Berendries and see who gives the reaction, if anybody. It's the sort of thing that a team leader would tell a domestique to do, and it would help take the pressure off Bugno, because the longer he stays here, the more people begin to think he's in serious frame of mind today. And Perrin has gone, and there he is, and we're heading up towards the Berendries, and so, you know, it's up to the others to chase now, and because of that, Bugno, I think, is going to watch where the reaction comes from, and he's moved up into 4th place, and he's making it look very casual, taking a drink out of his pocket. The reaction is coming, not surprisingly, from the MG boys, because they want nobody to slip this field in defence of Museu. Schmiel has spotted it, and I'm not too sure, but it might well be that that is Museu himself who's gone, because that would have caused the reaction from André Schmiel. But it might in fact have been Baldato. Watch for the ponytail, and that's the best way to pick him out. This is Perrin, who's nipping through the corners and trying to get out of sight as quickly as possible from the chase group. Judging by the crouch style of this man, we're looking at Fabio Baldato, and Schmiel has got on terms with him. This is going to hurt the weak ones in the breakaway, and that'll be the secondary advantage of the tactic being played by the Polti team. Little bit of a relief to see the arrow going downhill for a change, 7% descent, but it calls for the same skills, especially on cobblestones, and thank heavens not wet. Lovely cold but spring day here in the heart of Flanders. "35 kilometers from the finish, 23 miles approximately." So the riders now into their final hour of racing, and it should be a very explosive final hour too. I think indeed the chase down has come. I'm pretty sure that's Baldato and Schmiel, but it doesn't matter now, it's academic, because the field has reacted as well. So the Tour de Flanders comes back together once again, and the kilometres are slowly being ticked off. This all going very much towards a victory for Johan Museu. Job well done by Baldato. Well, there's some fine Belgian stock running in the opposite direction, and in fact they've seen the breakaway and they decide to turn around. Or everything back under control now. And Bugno now twitching, watching every move, because his teammate has not only been brought back, but has been promptly dispatched to the back of the long line. One senses now the tactics are being played here. Everybody is getting a little bit twitchy. And Capiot trying to take closer order. The man who started it all off. Riding there on the back wheel of Gianni Bugno, I think. Sitting here at the back, Eddie Schurer. Those beautifully bronze legs, I think, aching a little bit more than he hoped right now. He's been in one or two spots of bother. Carlo Bowman sitting near the back now, still trying to recover probably from his fine chase back after that flat back tyre. And the riders heading up towards the Berendries. That's why they're twitchy and that's why they're very nervous. Those with ambition must hold their place near the front, I think, now. That's Rob Harmeling. Tries to slow the race down a little bit just to ease the tempo back once again. Well, they continue to tell us that Frans Maassen is in this breakaway, but unless he's doing a very good job at hiding, I can't see him. Edwin van Hooijdonk certainly is here and riding very strongly. But if Maassen is here, he's going to go on the Berendries just like he did last year and took with him Johan Museeuw. So they've decided to ease back a little bit and they're leaving now Harmeling to do all of the pacemaking again, with Edwin van Hooijdonk in second place. Nobody willing to move yet again as we approach the Berendries. 63 metres is the height from sea level and it climbs a little bit less than that, and 13% is the steepest part of the gradient. And Harmeling is in the driving seat, which is a little bit surprising because he's not the best of climbers, but he's trying to keep this race under his speed and under his control. And if there's nobody willing to take him on, that will do him very, very nicely indeed. Perron still staying near the firs behind Edwin van Hooijdonk, and Carlo Bowmans is going to stamp the message out on the climb of the Berendries, followed by Schmil. Just behind Schmil is Van Hooijdonk. Van Hooijdonk is the rider who should cause the concern because he knows the Tour de Flanders so well. He won it first as an amateur, which is over a shorter distance of course, and twice as a professional. He's also had a third place as well. And Bowmans is keeping the pace high here in the hope he will stop anybody launching an attack which could cause a surprise. And he's doing a fine job for Museeuw. And this is the scene at the back, and our old friend Fabio Roscioli is having to bury himself a little bit on this climb, and so too is Dario Battaro, and I think slipping away from the field at last here is our old friend Rob Harmeling. He was at the front at the bottom, and now I'm afraid he looks as though, well, judging by his face, it is goodbye this time. And this is hurting one or two. They may not recover from this one. They've shown some great resistance, but that field is thinning out. The selection may be being made for the first time for a couple of hours of racing. Roscioli, Battaro, I think Schurer is in a little bit of trouble too, and Harmeling. The main field is just over a minute behind, by the way, what's left of the main field, and it's been a rather invisible main field today because we haven't been given any view of it at all since this breakaway established itself. But we are assured it's only around about a minute behind. Well, Schmil marking closely again and always over the top of these little bergs, at or near the front, keeping an eye on everybody. Well, Bugno not really in trouble there, but he's allowing go. No, here's Bugno, that was Perron. They look very alike when they sit in the saddle. And Carlo Bowmans has had a great climb over the Berendries. Nobody could get across him and drop him off to break his rhythm. He's just kept it nicely at the sort of speed he wanted, and he's never put his teammates in trouble, so that's another tactic that appears to have worked out. And Edwig van Hooijdonk in second place has been contained with 2 climbs still to come, but the big man is there. Well, the dark horse here, you know, could be the rider in red, Andre Schmil. He has watched every move. He has never allowed too much lead for anybody who's gone off the front, and he's always ridden over the top of these little hills in the top 3 or 4 positions. That's a sign of a man who thinks he can win the Tour of Flanders today. Let's have a look what happened after the climb of Carlo Bowmans. There are the riders we've dropped off, and they certainly include Harmeling, Botaro, and Roscioli is there, and the other man is Eddie Schura, and there's all the confirmation of that. So they're the 4 riders we've dropped, putting us something like 13 men surviving now in the lead. Well, there's just a chance they might recover and rejoin. It depends on the pressure being put on in that breakaway. They've still, of course, got the unfortunate 2 climbs still to come, but they might get back before the next one, which is the climb of the Muur-Kapelmuur, coming with 15 kilometers to go. Harmeling still looking pretty cool. And there's the tail of the convoy. Our camera's staying with the 4 men. And Harmeling, more a survival now to get back, and he doesn't seem to mind if he takes back 3 riders with him or not, despite the fact he has Johan Capiot safely up in that breakaway. And what a great ride Capiot is doing today indeed, because having found himself in the lead, he's watched the race grow around him ever since. And Perron looks to be suffering now. There he is, Van Hooijdonk, and they're just quite content to let Carlo Bowmans make the running. They don't see him as the likely winner. They see him as the workhorse now for the team from Italy. Word Perfect, the team of Jan Ross, the only real big win coming last year in the Tour du Pont in the United States with Raul Alcala. And Alcala now, of course, has joined the Motorola team. And there's the latest news at 16 seconds to the 4 riders we've just dropped, and still only 65 seconds to this elusive bunch we've never seen. And somebody's just flown through on the inside there. I'm not sure whether it's Ballerini or not who had a little attack, but he's gone. And there'll be cause for reaction if it is. And Perron, number 158 here, not too sure what to do. And Schmil wants somebody else to take up the running. Well, it wasn't Ballerini, because there's Ballerini just gone through on the inside. Let's go up and see if we can catch up with the leaders here and see who has turned the screw a little bit tight to try and break up this group again. It could be Marc Sergeant who launched the attack. Number 31 is Ballerini. Oh, indeed, no, because this is Marc Sergeant sitting at the back of the field. And perhaps we're looking now at Kengi Alta. 103 is Johan Capiot, Andre Schmil, and although we've got a bit of daylight, it's Van Hooijdonk who's bringing the line back into order. Rider who launched the attack, it appears to have been Guido Bontempi, number 72, just caught and brought back down the line. As they've all come back together again, and Bugno on the far right of the picture. Nobody else willing to go. Now, if they start these cat and mouse tactics, of course, the field will catch up. You can lose a minute in no time at all once you start playing around. We've got just 30 kilometres left to go, 19 miles. Down to the finishing line. Coming through the town of Nederbrakel here. And people beginning to feel it is time to try and force a decision. The next object will be the Muur, and they are worried about that. Nervous moments, especially for people like Edwig van Hooijdonk and Schmiel. Keeping the rhythm going here is Baldato. Perron is doing a great ride today, but watch Schmiel because he's gone through on the inside and he's chased immediately by Edwig van Hooijdonk, and now the counter-attack is coming. Van Hooijdonk knows that his race always begins on the last couple of climbs of any Tour de Flanders, and he's going to make sure he holds that race together until it's his time at least to have a go. And here is the very courageous little Frank Corvers there coming back up. He's closing down that gap yet again. This is the ride of his life today for that Koolstrop rider. And Schmiel has been countered. And the climb at the top of the Muur is at 15 kilometers from the finish. There's still about 10 minutes to race, I would think, before we get onto that climb. And for one reason or another, some want to keep this breakaway together until we reach it, and others want to try and break it up. Bugno himself happy to follow wheels, sitting there at the back of this lead group, not worried about pushing home any advantage they get, any daylight at all which forms. And Ballerini here calling on Schmiel for a little bit more effort, which is probably a little bit unfair because Schmiel has been a very active rider today, but they've sensed there is a bit of a gap. No, there isn't any more. And Ballerini is a man who needs to be away from the group if he's going to win this race. He's a single day classic rider. Van Hooijdonk slipping down the line here now. Probably to check just who is still around in this line, and Capiot's gone through, and I think Van Hooijdonk should have been a bit smoother onto that back wheel of Johan's, because now he's got to make a bit of an effort to close up. And the lead is reforming again. Ballerini, Schmiel, Capiot. Well, Capiot seems to have found his second wind here, because he was certainly in trouble very early on the climbs, and yet now he seems to be in control of affairs once again. There's Van Hooijdonk, not looking like a winner at the moment. He's having to really scrabble for the wheels. Johan Museu has got them all in front of him now. I'm just seeing who, if anybody's behind him. That's the little group of four still trying desperately to get onto this race. They can almost touch them and then it goes away again. It must be absolutely exasperating. And that's Frank Corvers, so they've shed another 3 in fact from that breakaway with the sudden accelerations. They've detached just 3 of them. Marc Saint-Jean on the far side, still here. Capiot, all of a sudden this race is becoming a little bit more like we used to in the Tour of Flanders, the Belgian riders surviving better. Museu again running down the outside to check what's going on. Going in front of Marc Saint-Jean, then giving him a good look in the face to see why he let him in, making sure that it may be because of exhaustion rather than playing a crafty card right now. There's the 3 riders who look like getting back, who are caught in that acceleration. Frank Corvers is going to try and do it. I think Kengialta is the other one. And Baldato, surprisingly, split off that leading group this time. There they are in close-up. Kengialta going through now, seeing his chance, trying to sprint clear and leave the other 2 in no man's land. little bit of inexperience there by Frank Corvers. It's no good overdoing it at the front and then watching the two riders in your slipstream go round you and leave you still chasing by yourself. And that's what Kengi Alta has tried to do. He's used the effort of Corvers to bridge the gap, but Corvers has hung on. Oh dear me, they got so close you could almost have touched them, and in fact somebody's attacked again at the front, and as luck would have it, the elastic is stretched once more, and Capiot is in trouble, and just look how that gap has opened, and yet they were almost there. Well, we're about half an hour of racing from the finish, no more than that. And there's still a lot of riders in contention. It's a long time since I can recall a big sprint finish in the Tour de Flanders. There's the composition of this front group now. The men who are left, and the Belgians, you can see, have now got 4 riders in here, the Italians 3. The odds are a little bit more even. Museo will not be too content with Capiot here, and Capiot wants to make sure that Johan stays in front of him. Bugno too dropping behind a little bit now. Well, this is when it plays to be a poker player and not give away your hand, because the riders are not too sure how the others feel right now. And the 2 climbs to come, well, that should be enough to tell them. They're steep. And the worst one really is the Muur. The Bosberg is not such a terrible climb, especially in fine weather like this, but the Muur is cobbled, it's very narrow, and the following vehicles are not allowed to go up the climb. 15 miles to run now into the finish, approximately 24 kilometres. So it'll be a little more than half an hour. And slowly but surely, those 3 are trying again, and I think this time they may be in luck. Well, this looks like Capiot is going to have a dig. The man who's been hanging on, the man who started it all, is now going away again, and this time there's no Olaf Ludwig behind to have fallen off to cause the split, and Johan Capiot is trying again. Now this is the sign of a man who wants some space before the last 2 climbs. We've seen him in trouble on the climbs all the time, and so the answer as far as he's concerned is to lead on the climbs, and at least he could be with the group for the kill and use his sprint by the finish. But they've seen it all before, and the chase has come quicker than I think Capiot would have liked. Ballerini, and the man always marked by Ballerini is Johan Museo, the exact man that Johan Capiot did not want to see, but even so he's going to dig in and take his wheel. And we've now got 3 real stars trying to go clear now, and Schmil knows it, and he's trying to reduce it. And I think that's Frank Corvers, the plucky little youngster, who has only just rejoined at the back and is trying desperately to get onto the wheel of Andre Schmil. Well, he deserves a real good finish today, Frank Corvers. It's his big day and he's risen to the occasion. Superb piece of riding. There's Ballerini, as always, when the race starts to go wrong, he calls for some assistance from the riders who are chasing. Schmiller's across and come across very strongly. Bugno was alert too, he's come over. What a lovely peddler this man is. Looks very much like the now retired Stephen Roach. And what's Kengi Alta hanging on? Oh, I thought he was going to attack, but he's hanging on. Well, we now have 2 very distinct groups in this leading group of the Tour of Flanders as we head out towards the Muur at Gerardsbergen. 21 kilometres to go now, just over 12 miles to the finish. Well, blue seems to be the colour this last couple of years for the choice of most of the teams. And at times it really does make it hard work to pick out the different riders with colours that look so similar from a distance. And the man missing out here now is Edwin van Hooijdonk in 2nd place. He would like to see this gap closed down very, very quickly without too much effort, if that's possible at this stage, because it would blunt his speed for the 2 climbs to come. Good move by Capiot this, although he's now found himself in rather hot company, not least Gianni Bugno's turning out to be the big surprise of this breakaway. The Italians wouldn't really have expected this, even though they know this man has unlimited talents, but you just don't know when he will show those talents. Capiot, a real fighter. Johan Capiot, just seeing who's there, riding it close to the right-hand side of the road. Now, quite honestly, unless you ride this race at this moment, you wouldn't know which rider to mark, because you would have to sense the strength of the rider. They've all got the reputation. You would expect any one of them to pull off a surprise victory, I think. Well, it wouldn't be seen as a surprise indeed if any of them did win. They've all got the caliber and quality of performance behind them. But they're all going to be afraid of just one man, and that's Johan Capiot, who packs the finishing sprint. Johan Capiot, on the far right of our picture, picked up 4 wins last year, or in 1993 indeed, and made a 3rd place in Paris-Roubaix in 1992. He's got the quality. Never had a really great finish in the Tour de Flanders because the course is a difficult one for him, but today he really has produced some performance. And there's Marc Sergent, who loves this race, but he's now finding himself trapped in the wrong part of the breakaway. And I think this is the end of the line for Edwin van Hooijdonk. That breakaway has gone. And I think the decision has been made here. They've missed out. Baldato won't be helping now. His job is done. His man is up front, Johan Capiot. And this should now be the winning breakaway, but there are still 5 men here. And still 2 climbs to come as well. The following cars are in. A little bit early perhaps, because it's only 21 seconds. Capiot read it all right so far, sitting behind the one sprinter who perhaps can push him in the sprint. Johan Capiot and Ballerini, he'll have to break away, and he knows it. And he's going to have to do it, I think, on one of the small climbs to come. We're heading up now to the wall of Gerardsbergen, 20% climb, a very steep climb indeed, bringing them up to 92 metres over sea level. It's a climb about 85 metres in fact, during the 20% or 1 in 5. Steep climb, cobbled hill. Many cycle racers have pedalled over this in years gone by, amateur and professional, single day and multi-day races. And the crowd are used to seeing the appearance of the top names and have been for many years approach this climb. And it's Capiot, surprisingly, maybe, well, not surprisingly really, because he's dangled there a lot. He made the move, he wanted to reach this climb alone, and now he's again forced to the back seat to watch. Bugno is a good climber. He's not an explosive climber though. He's a long distance climber of the big mountains, and I would expect Schmil perhaps to try something here. Capiot will go with whatever happens. He has the power in his legs to win this race in the sprint, and he knows it. And Ballerini surely will try. He's got to the front. So the riders turn to the right, and all official cars will go off to the left. As you can see, the police officer directing there, and they're now on their own. There's spare wheels waiting on the climb for anybody who has problems. But as you will see very shortly, this climb becomes so narrow there's no room for a vehicle, and that would block up the whole race if there was a problem. And Capiot now knows this climb so well, he's limiting his losses. He immediately starts to tail off. The cheers will be for him. After all, he did start the breakaway today, which is turning out to be the winning move in this year's Tour de Flanders, and it's been an extremely good race indeed. And Ballerini, one big last effort for him now, just to test how strong these riders are behind him. Ballerini, his big figure stamping on those pedals. Schmiller's got his wheel. His little Moldovan is sitting there just waiting, hoping, as I'm afraid because the same could be said too of Johan Capiot. We're not round yet. Wait till we get around this corner. Now the climb starts. Ballerini stringing them out. Museo in a little bit of trouble, but limiting his losses as well. Bugno not looking too great. If this has been the Tourmalet, Bugno might have been in contention, but it's not. You've got to use your pure strength to get up it, and Ballerini's got plenty of that. And 5 riders surviving what has been a great Tour de Flanders. That seems to be the trend this year with the classic races so far. Milan San Remo 2 with Giorgio Furlan winning there, but Furlan choosing not to start today. In fact, reportedly training now for the upcoming Liège-Bastogne-Liège Classic in the Belgian Ardennes. Well, that's the other side of Belgium. This is where they speak Flemish, and this is where they know they're cycling. And Franco Ballerini knows too that he must break these riders on this climb, and he's trying. A long, thin line of chasers there. Van Hooijdonk, so often in the driving seat, is now having to defend to hold his position as we go up now to the leaders. It was Bontempi who was leading the charge up there, over the top of the Muur. One man appears to be missing off the back, and that's Johan Capiot. The other man has been pushed down the back is Gianni Bugno, but Ballerini's little tactic did not work. Well, it's worked in as much that he shed himself of Johan Capiot, so that's one sprinter out of the way, unless he gets back before we face the final climb in the Bosberg. But he still has 3 fast finishers here. Museu wants to make sure that Schmil doesn't miss a turn now, because he is a good sprinter, and it's always a difficult finish in Meerbeke. You make the right turn, you can see the finish for a long way, it's slightly uphill. You have to judge it to perfection. That's Rudy Dormans, the winner once, and also Frans Maassen, who was beaten last year by Johan Museu. Capiot's dropped 15 seconds, the others are back 42. I think those at 42 have no hope now of coming up. And Capiot will have to find some special big effort to close 15 seconds too. And when he gets back, he'll be on the Bosberg. No time to relax now. Schmil drives through, followed by Ballerini. The 2 riders possibly with the least chance in the sprint are trying to keep the pace high. Bugno looking very cool, his face giving nothing away at all. The same might be said of Museu. And you've got to also admit that these 4 riders are not shirking their duties either. They're not thinking yet of the finish, they're only thinking of keeping this group away. Former double world champion in 91 and 92, Gianni Bugno. Surprisingly in this breakaway, and knowing the Italians never win the Tour de Flanders, but there's a chance. There are 2 of them in that leading group. This is Capiot continuing now, he's in no man's land. But for the man who started the race today, if he finishes in 5th place, started the breakaway rather, if he finishes in 5th place, he is going to, I would have thought, be pleased enough with that. Although to a professional, it's the victory that counts. Schmil drops back, waits for Bugno to come through, and then resumes his place at the back of the line. They're not doing long turns at the front now, are they? And in fact, Schmil is opening the door a little bit. No, he isn't. Ballerini's having none of that. There in the distance is the lone figure of Capiot. They can't afford to slow down too long, otherwise they'll have another sprinter to worry about. Museu just enough to take the line through and drop back. And in fact, that's the same for all of them now. They're doing just enough to keep the rhythm. They're not wanting to work any more than they have to. 268 kilometres, this classic, just a couple of kilometres shorter than the upcoming Paris-Roubaix, but every bit as hard because of the small climbs. We're now facing up to the Bosberg. The last climb of the 16, 1.3 kilometres long. And again, they all want each other in front of one another because they know the surprise could come from the man who gets the back position, and that's Bugno just now. Capiot is creeping back. 12 seconds the gap, the others are going away, almost a minute. And there he is. And sadly for him, he's going to get almost on just as they start the climb in the Bosberg, and surely that will be the end of Johan today. Viciously cruel sport. You can hear Bugno in fact shouting "Allez, allez." He wants the Museu to come through. There's the sign that welcomes you to Bosberg. And there's the cobblestones which reminds you exactly where you are in Belgium. 500 metres the climb now to the top. It's been a steady drag until this point. Bugno anxious to know, in fact, if Capiot is making any more progress. And again Ballerini assumes the front position, but he hasn't got the firepower that's going to win in this race, I don't think. This big man isn't going well enough just yet. And Bugno keeps his gears low and pedals very, very quickly on the climb. This is going to hurt them. Gianni Bugno today seems to be riding like the champion he was a couple of years ago, the winner of Milan-San Remo previously, in record time too. And up over the top of the Bosberg, and for the first time, well, not the first time, but in recent years really, the race is still not decided. So Bugno is still going to have to block off as best he can. He won the Tour of Italy and Milan-San Remo in 1990. And he led the Tour of Italy all of the way. He was the first rider to do that since the great Eddy Merckx. And indeed, that shot him to #1 in the world rankings. He slipped a little bit since then, but not a great deal. Now it's up to him. Because I think if it's going to be a win for Italy, it's not going to come from Ballerini now. Ballerini again tries to stretch them, and you can't fault him for that. As the motorcyclists traditionally now, they've seen them on the Bosberg, they've missed the shot. Well, indeed, they never had the chance to get one. There was no attack of note. That's what they were all waiting for. Now it's the next shot will be of the finish. 25 seconds to Capiot. You see the hill has hurt him again, and 45 seconds to the group from Baldato, and that's coming back a little bit, but it won't be enough now. 10 kilometres from the line. 6 miles to go. No more obstacles at all. The road basically is good. And I think that was the 10-kilometre banner that we've just spotted on the right of the road. And everybody wants the motorcycles out the way, including the chief commissaires here. But they're trying desperately to get the final shot before they move away. As they break, the riders themselves now settle in for the kill. Well, if you were a betting person, you'd have to go for last year's winner, Johan Museu, as the great sprinter he is. Schmil is a finisher. He's won the Grand Prix Pinot Cerami before. Professional since 1989, and no great wins under his belt. He won the Soviet Championship back in 1991. Bugno, we know, can sprint if he's in the mood and if he's on form, and today he's had a great ride, and that's going to have given him the confidence. Ballerini is the one I really can't see winning this race now. Home advantage though to Johan Museu. He knows these roads, having won here last year. Still, that face of Bugno tells us nothing at all. Neither does it tell us of any pain that he may have felt on the roads today. Ballerini, last drink, and over the shoulder it goes. 35 seconds to Capiot, 52 to Baldato's little group, which contains, of course, Edwig van Hooijdonk, who lost his chance approaching the Berendries, not the Berendries, rather the Muur. And there's the shot you've just seen our motorcycle cameraman focusing in on. And one or two of those chains sound a little bit squeaky now. Not the sort of thing that you want, because riders will listen for things like that when the sprint starts. And the sun itself has left us, so there'll be no help from the shadows on the road. Well, it's worth recalling just where these four riders finished in last year's Tour de Flanders. And in fact, Franco Ballerini, he managed to take 6th place. Johan Capiot still behind in 5th position on the road. He finished in 10th. Gianni Bugno was 43rd. Johan Museo, of course, was the winner. And Andre Schmil in the red here finished 11th. And they're all in for a real shout of a high finish now. Well, looking at the first 4 places, it's a matter of shaking the cards up and deciding what the final order will be, because I don't think anybody now can come back. Museo, he's going to be quite nervous because he knows the quality of the group he's with. It's not a case of just taking on one rider as he did last year with Frans Maassen, because they finished last year 22 seconds ahead of Dario Bertaro. And Marc Sergeant was 4th. But for a sprinter, this could be a very confusing finish. Schmil leaning over and signalling there possibly to Jean-Luc Van den Broek. He might like a little bit of local knowledge right now. Museo is happy when he's got the other 3 in front of him. But none stay there long enough. They do just about 25 metres of pacing and immediately get away from the front. Capiot dropping away, the Baldato group also dropping away. We're looking now at the first 4 of the Tour of Flanders. They've worked for it. There's been nobody here under false pretenses. They've been here because of their pure ability to succeed. They've all got plenty of success behind them in varying ways. Probably the least successful and the least known to us is Andre Schmil. But he is a rider who's riding extremely well this year. His best season was 1991 when he took 4 victories, including the USSR National Championship. Bugno, probably the most accomplished rider of the 4. And Ballerini, still thinking of what might have been 1 year ago in Paris-Roubaix when he was beaten in the photo finish after putting his arms in the air when Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle was given the result. And I think Ballerini can wave goodbye to anything but possibly 3rd or 4th place now, because his ability in the sprint won't match up with these thoroughbreds when they come to it. 6.3 kilometres to go, just over 3.5 miles, and we're in Den de Windeke. And again you see Ballerini always insists that nobody shirks their duty. He's keeping them exactly where he sees them. At least he'll limit the possibilities of being outmanoeuvred. It does seem as though Ballerini wants to follow the wheel of Museu. Schmil, who can speak French by the way, simply gets on with the job in hand. And the sun has come through again now, and the shadows are going in front of them. The sun is on their backs. That could cause a result in the sprint, because the riders will see the shadow come first when the sprinters start on the uphill finish towards the line. I'm quite sure that Museu, Bugno, Schmil and Ballerini will have noted that. They'll also remember too, though, that they have a right turn to come before the climb up to the finish. It looks indeed as though somebody's camera case has dropped off one of the motorbikes. Little pockets of crowd now watching it come through here. And before these 4 riders are out of sight, they'll be inside their houses with the television on to see who gets the verdict. Just 3 miles to the finish. No time to relax because of the chase behind, and yet nobody wants to use up those last few ounces of valuable energy for the sprint. If Ballerini fancies it, he's got to go, and he's got to go before the line. The long straight road, well, that doesn't favour anybody attacking at this point. And unfortunately now the narrow roads of the little hills of Flanders are left behind, and the twists and turns are just long straight runs in towards the finish. And in fact that's Eddy Merckx in the official car down there, who's now probably predicting who will win. Well, if Eddy had been riding, it would have probably been himself, but right now I think he'll go for Johan Museeuw. A little bit of patriotism, and also the fact that Museeuw is the sprinter. Museeuw just keeping an eye on everybody. Little piece of psychology too. If you look around a lot, you appear to be in control of the situation, and if the other riders are feeling a little bit tired or rough, they will have also noted that as well. Bugno keeping the race over to the right. Any attacks will have to come from the left. He knows it, and Ballerini's had to do that, and he's gone. He saw the chance of a little bit of drafting on the motorcycle. He's jumped across the road, but he knows really they spotted it. And indeed, Bugno signalling to his head there, which is an indication, are you mad or what? Because there was no real attack there in the end. He launched it to try and get a reaction. It never came, and they were straight on him. And it was interesting to note too that Museeuw was so alert to that move. He immediately reacted to Ballerini, and Bugno wants to call Museeuw through. Museeuw says, no, it's not my turn, it's the guy behind me. And so as a result, Bugno has taken up position. 2.4 says the screen, but you may have noticed we've just passed the yellow 3 kilometres to go marker. 1.7 miles to the finish. At the end of this long road we'll turn right, and there it is. Bugno following Ballerini. Museeuw just flexing a little bit there, just checking if the firepower is still in those big thighs. Schmiel just seems to get mixed in with it all and carries on his own private race. He has a good finish. He could be a surprise. Ballerini goes through, and Bugno's planning something here. He missed a turn and he's gone. Bugno's gone to the left now. Ballerini, and now the Italian has chased the Italian, and Museeuw will be happy about that because he relied on Ballerini then. He saw Bugno go, but he was on the wrong side of Ballerini to reach him, and Ballerini has closed it down. So there's no love lost here between two Italian riders, and I think, knowing the power of the sprint of Museeuw, I would have looked at Museeuw and said, well, you chase him down, you're the one who believes can win this race, and then jumped him. And Ballerini didn't bother with any tactic, he just closed it down. He might live to regret that. Museeuw answered it, I've got to say, very, very easily indeed in the end. No, he came off that wheel of Ballerini. Now, whose turn will it be? This is the sort of tactic the sprinter loves, and Museeuw is happy. Ballerini's going to go again, but he really doesn't use his head too much because Museeuw is not very far away. And look at the acceleration of Johan Museeuw. Little bit of a struggle by Schmiel, and Bugno just sits there right back on the saddle and thinks of those legs going up and down like pistons. His shoulders don't move. And now they're coming up towards the finish here. There's still another right after this one, but he's stringing them out nicely. It'll all come back together this time, I think, as Schmiel tries to get onto the front there. And the man in trouble at the back, well, he's not really in trouble because they're all going to ease at the front. Now they have to watch this little section of road here because the race has to be kept to the right of these traffic cones, so they make sure they make the right turn to the finish. A little bit of a hazard, but normally they don't expect there to be many riders in the bunch sprint for the finish of the Tour de Flandes, La Ronde, and indeed there aren't many, but there are 4 today, and we don't usually see that many. Now we'll be coming up to the right turn very shortly. Bugno at the back. Commissaire making sure his red flag is handy there to stop anybody interfering now with what should be a sprint. If we can see it, you should see the banner right up the road. There it is now. Bugno has the back position. Schmil is watching for the move. That's why Ballerini is keeping the race over the right to force the attack on the left of the road. Bugno is waiting as long as possible, so too is Schmil. Museo would like them both to start so he could get on with the sprint, and Bugno is going to open it up. He's gone left to break the elastic, and now he'll probably come across the road, and he's doing just that now. Ballerini's got his wheel. Museo is going to have to go quick to get through the inside. He's been shut out by Bugno, but there's still a clear length in it, so Bugno is quite legal to do that. Museo is coming a long way round, and it's going to be very, very tight on the line. Bugno, I think, has taken it, and he's taken it right on the line there. But I don't know, it'll go to the photo for sure, but you know, I think that Johan Museo has made the mistake of his life here. The winner of 1 year ago left his sprint too late and too long. It looked from our position that Bugno had done enough, but he could have made the fatal mistake of throwing his arms in the air, and it may have cost him the result. And so, an Italian victory, as rare as warm sunshine in spring in Belgium in this event. And now has he got it? There he is down in the centre of the compound. He's not looking too happy, but they always say he never smiles, and I suppose to a degree that's true. And in fact, they're just saying, do you think you got it? Let's have a look. Look at the finish now by Museo. This was an act of desperation by Johan. Watch the white line, and as they come to the line, well, I think he's got it. But it's very difficult because of the varying speeds of the finish of the bicycle against the speed they set the camera at. It does change shapes of the elongations of the machines on the photo finish film. And Bugno is saying nothing. He's going to wait until somebody tells him officially. This is how he made his move. He went very, very wide. And Ballerini spotted it, moved across at the expense of Andre Schmil to get the wheel of Bugno, but you can see the difference in sprinting. Ballerini lumbers and heavy on his machine, but the finesse of Museo, but the big ground he had to make up, he left himself far too much here. He should have walked this finish, he knows it so well. He had to move to the left because Bugno was shutting down the right onto the barrier side. Now the sprint to the line. You see the hand went up, and Bugno should never have done that. He almost shrugs his shoulders at this point as he comes up to the line. But looking at the picture right there, I think you've got to give the victory to the Italian, even though he very nearly made the fatal mistake.
Het is zoiets zoals Eddie Plankaert met Steve Bauer op de piste van Parijs-Roubaix.
Well, there you are, the speaker here comparing that finish with the great finish of Steve Bauer of Canada and Eddie Plankaert on the track at Roubaix a couple of years ago. That was the closest finish of Paris-Roubaix. And looking down now on the melee of photographers pushing in there, and Gianni Bugno becomes only the 4th Italian in the history of the Tour de Flanders to be declared the winner, and you can't do it with a closer winning margin than this, just like Paris-Roubaix. And Italian riders have now won this race 6 times, but only with 4 different men. So the result of the Tour of Flanders in what has been the closest race in the history of the event, and this is the 78th, a win for Gianni Bugno of Italy in 6 hours 45 minutes and 20 seconds. In second place Johan Museo, third Andre Schmil, and Franco Ballerini fourth, all given the same time. Johan Capiot survived to take 5th, and he was just 1 minute and 11 seconds back. And then came Fabio Baldato, Guido Bontempi, Marc Sergeant, and Edwig van Hooijdonk, twice a previous winner, finished in 9th place. And so it's been a long wait to determine the result of the 78th Tour de Flanders, but now we await the arrival of Johan Museo. A nice congratulations from Museo to Gianni Bugno, declared the winner. And he now goes in the footsteps of the famous Italian riders as winner of this great race. Fiorenzo Magni, who won the race 49, 1950 and 1951. Dino Zandigu in 1967. Moreno Argentine in 1990. Gianni Bugno in 1994. This has been the 78th Tour of Flanders. It really has been a classic. Stay with Famous Cycling Videos for the next big classic. That'll be from Paris to Roubaix. Until then, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.